Welcome to my Claim Your Worthiness podcast, intimate conversations with Gail Jones. We all have a safe place within to create anew. In each episode, I hope to add to your inner sanctuary to strengthen the belief in yourself and your dreams. Claiming our worthiness sets the foundation for centering us back into our greatness. From this foundation, we create our most amazing lives. I'll be sharing insights and resources from my own journey and from others who are transforming their lives. Lean in and receive the wisdom shared. You are worthy of having this special time with yourself. Hi, I'm Gail Jones, and delighted to have as my guest today Dr. Gary Salyer, who calls himself a transformational relationship mentor. For the last decade, Dr. Salyer has been in private practice offering singles and couples heart-centered transformation so they can rewrite the rules for love in their brains and create a love that lasts. Dr. Gary speaks to a national audience as a featured expert on various celebrity TV and radio shows, such as Hay House Radio and Coast to Coast AM. He is the author of the groundbreaking book, Safe to Love Again, How to Release the Pain of Past Relationships and Create the Love You Deserve. Gary, before we begin discussing your unique approach to helping clients build secure relationships and feel safe again to love or deepen the love they have, can you talk a little bit about your own journey to worthiness and to knowing you are indeed lovable?
Sure. I can honestly say that worthiness was one of the things that was in scarce supply.
Okay.
As a kid. When I was born, my mother was so disappointed that I wasn't a girl that she refused to name me for 3 weeks. And it literally wasn't until the state of Ohio sent some state troopers to her house. And I heard this from my aunt, so I didn't get this from her, that they knocked on the door and said, "Ma'am, you've got to name the child." And she goes, "No, it's not a girl. I don't care." And then they said, "Ma'am, if you don't name him, if you don't give us a name right here, we can take you to some place that you have all the time in the world to think about." So then my aunt blurbed out, "Name him after your two favorite actors. So Gary Cooper and Dean Martin."
Oh, funny.
So by the time I got to be 7, I was noticing that meanness ran in the family and that the aunts and uncles weren't always kind and loving to each other. And I wondered, why can't adults just love each other? It just didn't make any sense why they were so mean.
Wow.
Kids just think, why can't they be nice?
Right.
And so when I went to college at 18, I thought, I am not going to be divorced, man, not like the rest of my family. So I had a degree in psychology and religion. And then my senior year, my favorite professor called me into his office and gave me a personality test. 2 days later, I come in, he gives me the results. And as I'm walking out, he says, "Oh, by the way, you've got a 90% chance of having a divorce."
He did? Wow.
He did. And the funny thing is, he's 86 now. We just spoke this summer, and he still remembers that. Well, bombs go off in my head.
Right.
I stay a 5th year to get another degree in marriage and family. So imagine my surprise when 12 years later, my first wife says, "I want a divorce." I mean, I've done everything. So I spend like 7.5 years doing therapy. And then I say, pronounce myself good to go. And imagine how much of a shock it is when that marriage lasts 4 years. And their handwriting was on the wall after 3 or 4 months.
Really?
I was like, what is going on? And so after a string of relationships in which I realized there was one common denominator, and it wasn't women, which was my staple go-to before. Eventually, I just remember thinking, I've worked hard. No one should work this hard. I've got degrees. I've done workshops. You name it, I did it. And I said, if they can't crack the code, I will.
So that will lead us to how you got into your theory and what you do. But I'm just curious, what did you personally have to do before you came up with your theory to reclaim your own worthiness coming from that kind of childhood? We know those first 7 years are so critical. They wire our brain for the future, those 7 years. What did you do to say to yourself you knew you were worthy, or how did you act on being worthy?
I think I've been guided this way. I signed up for some NLP-based personal change work, and I can honestly say the universe has guided me on this one.
Okay.
There have been so many serendipitous conjunctures in my life. And because I really do believe that's the phrase that's there, that once you make a decision, all manner of resources start opening up.
I love
right?
that. Love that. Can you say that one more time? I love that.
Once you make a decision, all manner of resources start opening up to you.
Okay.
And I the way I look at it, and I just declared my intention, and I was really guided along the way.
So what was your intention that you declared?
The book came from a 20-minute chance talk with Marcy Shimoff.
Right.
She just looked at the title of the book, which originally was going to be Resisting. I just met her for 20 minutes randomly at a retreat where she was attending. We just went on, and they said that, and we went out for a walk at a break because they said, hey, take a walk with somebody. And I didn't even know who I was talking to.
Interesting.
And she says, the title of the book, she goes, blah, blah, blah. And I said, by the way, what's your last name? She goes, Shime. I go, oh, you have a New York Times bestseller. And
yeah, Gary, just for the listeners. Gary, just for the listeners, what was her book name?
Her name was Love for No Reason at All, Happy for No Reason at All, 2 books with Chicken Soul. But she just looks at me. She goes, Gary, I love your book. I love your idea, but it's the wrong title. And then she just rolled her eyes and said, it's not Resisting Love. She goes, your title and your brand is Safe to Love Again.
So she came up with your title.
She did. The universe just dropped that on me, man.
So what was the intention you set? You said when you set the intention, all the resources open. What was the intention you set?
I remember it was after one very painful breakup. And I knew I had shown up as Mr. Wrong on this one. I knew it was pointing clearly at me. Monday morning, shaving before, getting my day started. And that was a long look in the mirror that morning. And I'm just looking at me and I'm saying, this is all on you, son. I just said, I will not go out of life without the love that I have been seeking my whole life. I simply refuse to accept this as, yep, you had a bad childhood. I'm not going to say, oh, and then I thought, but you've tried everything. And I said, then I'll create something that's not out there.
That's what, and you certainly did that in your book. So I look forward to talking about that in a little bit. But so before we get into the whole, what differentiates your book from other books out there, are there any specific ways you've noticed your clients have been trapped in feelings of unworthiness?
Oh, all over the place. When I'm working with clients, I really believe there's an epidemic of unworthiness out there. Even if you had a secure childhood, there's so many cultural voices that if you don't make so much money, if you don't do Pilates, if you're not a 6-packs, if all this stuff, there are so many ways that the universe, our culture bombards us with, you're not good enough, you're not this, not that. Even the dating apps and dating sites, you have these long lists of what people want. And when someone gets into that, then you're thinking, gosh, I haven't ever done Pilates. I guess there's something deficient in my life. There's all that unworthiness out there. And then there's all the messages that a lot of us were given in childhood. So most people come in feeling either the words will be, I feel like I'm broken, or one of the phrases is, I'm just not enough. And they will say it in various ways. But when either the feeling or the words not enough are in the building, then you know that so is unworthiness. Yes.
So is there a way like that they're settling, they're staying in unfulfilling relationships? Is there something like you notice that they can't set a boundary? Are there certain patterns that show up in a relationship because they're not feeling worthy?
Yes. When you don't feel worthy, you have it. I put that under the dominant thing is you just don't ask for your needs.
Excellent.
So you give and give and give and give. Now, it shows up in a lot of ways. I've had women whose primary missing feeling was feeling worthy. And they'll find takers in the relationship, guys that will just take, or they'll just give and then resent it. But it will work elsewhere. It won't be just in their relationships. You'll find out that they'll say, I don't know what's going on in my business. I never charge my value. Or I'm always giving away freebies. It shows up in a variety of ways. Unworthy says, I can't have my needs met.
Okay. And we're going to talk about those in a minute.
Yeah.
But as Gary, healing is an inward journey. And I love this quote by Deepak Chopra when he was talking about why people are resistant to being still and meditating. So I'm just going to share the quote and then ask you to elaborate. What they're afraid of is intimacy with their own self. So they are running around trying to find fulfillment outside. But when you have intimacy with yourself, you have intimacy with the world. So can you talk a little bit about building intimacy within before extending it to another?
Yeah, you do have to have intimacy within. You do. You have to be knowledgeable. But when I think of intimacy within, I think about my phrase for it is called rapport with self.
Oh, I love that.
You're not judging yourself. You are understanding, even when you're doing stuck patterns and things are sabotaged, some part of you is literally doing that for a good reason, but it was 40 or 50 years ago. And it's about being able to see that some part of you is working really hard to keep you safe, but the danger is over and it doesn't know that. We've been told we're broken, and I was always afraid of what I would find within me. I think because I had a borderline mother, I remember telling my first therapist that there's no way you're ever going to take me some places because I don't want to look Medusa in the eye. I don't think I've ever said this on air. I was expecting, man, if I get down there, I'm going to see that my borderline mother in me, and I don't ever want to see that. So I was always afraid of Medusa.
Okay.
There were certain places I didn't let them take me. And then after 2 divorces, that wasn't working out so well for me.
Right. So you had to go there.
And I remember when I did the work with the guy that did my original NLP training, I did sessions with him too. I had done this thought and I said, look, I've told people there's places you can't take me before, but this time I want to see the Medusa. I'm willing to look for it because it's more painful not looking. And you know what the biggest surprise of my life was?
What was that, Gary?
That what was inside me was not a Medusa. It was just a scared 7-year-old boy that you just want to hug, who was trying to figure out how to make sense of the most chaotic world and how to make sure he wasn't thrown against walls. Just a scared little 7-year-old. So if you're listening to this and there's some part of you that's afraid of getting to know yourself, all you're going to meet are the tender, most lovable parts of yourself that match. And yes, some of them have created painful patterns, but it's deep down inside, there's no part of your system that doesn't have beautiful intentions.
Right.
It's just for a situation that doesn't exist anymore.
I love how you just said that. Even when I do work with clients around releasing some of those limiting beliefs, and I know your approach is different, but I always say we do it with love and compassion because you did nothing wrong, that those beliefs were formed when you were a child that didn't have the discernment skills to say, no, that's not who I am.
Yeah.
So love and compassion is so important to healing instead of judging ourselves.
Yeah, absolutely. And kids pick up the only compassion they figure out is what they've been given. So if you weren't given compassion, you won't know how to be it with yourself. And that tends to stick around. I still remember the first time I stubbed a toe once, and I was about ready to say a few choice things, and his mother looked at me, and I realized I couldn't say that. I'm sitting there holding my toe before I go jogging. I had really stubbed it, and my little 3.5-year-old son comes up and taps me on the shoulder 3 times because I didn't realize I had that tendency, and he says, "Use your words, Daddy. Use your words."
Oh.
And it was exactly the way we comforted him.
Right. Interesting. Yeah. Well, your approach is really different when you talk about building secure relationships. And I know there are 3 types of relationships that you focus on: the anxious relationship, the avoidant, and the secure, which is what we all want for the most healthy relationship. And from reading your book, I hope I have this right statistic, but only 50% of relationships are secure. Is that correct?
50%, it's 50% of people, not relationships.
Oh, 50% of people.
50% of people are secure. Okay. And then 25% are anxious.
Okay.
20% are avoidant.
Okay.
And then 5% is like anxious avoidant, but that also gets gets into something called disorganized, which is more of a clinical problem with it. But for what I call most middle-class craziness, like you and I have, you're part of that 95% that's 50% anxious, 25%, 50% secure, 25% anxious, and 20% avoidant.
So for the listeners, could you just quickly explain what an anxious relationship looks like and what a avoidant relationship looks like.
Sure.
And then we'll dive deep into the secure. Yeah.
Okay. So for an anxious, what they're having is somewhere along the line, they got responses and not responses. They were attended to and not attended to. So love was there and not there, not there. And they get an attachment, what's called an attachment and a connection, and then it's not there. So some part develops a fight response. I'm going to lock this thing down. This thing ain't getting away from me again. And it amps up the system. And so then there's like hypervigilance and there's preoccupation with when does love go away? And then you'll get the text like, oh, how come you didn't text me back in 10 minutes? Where were you last night? Do you still love me? Oh, those sort of things.
So it's clingy and maybe demanding a little bit?
Demanding, yes, can be demanding. Okay, you could get that one avoidant too, but you can be. But there's this preoccupation. When does love go away? And they're so anxious, and they tend to get into a lot of drama games, protest behavior, before you've even done it, right?
That's interesting.
And so they superheat a lot of conversations, get a lot of reactive states, and it's just too much, and people leave. And then they say, see, I told you you're going to leave me.
So they set it up, the expectation someone's going to leave, and they drive them away by being so needy and clingy and demanding.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And how about the
self-fulfilling prophecy?
Avoidant? How does that look in a relationship?
The avoidant got the exact opposite. They were never given much attention at all. Okay. So in fact, they're given so little attention as children typically that they actually learn to walk earlier than secure and anxious babies because some part knows the cavalry isn't coming over the crest when they need a bottle.
Oh, that's interesting.
Okay. Now, as children, they're the ones that are the quiet types playing by themselves, and they look so mature for their age, but really they're not expecting anybody to be there for them. So they become dismissive. They have a flight response. They tone down their system. They tone down their emotions. They usually are more into their intellect than their body or their emotions, and they become dismissive. They can be fearful or they can just be dismissive, but there's some part that their worst fear is depending on somebody or being depended on. So they become the emotionally unavailable man is a term for that. There's also emotionally unavailable women, by the way, and they don't tend to commit. Now, this doesn't mean they can't be married, but if you are married, they could be someone who gets married, but they're just not that attuned, or it feels like you're in the same house, but they're on Jupiter.
They're the Lone Ranger types, maybe?
Lone Ranger types. I call them the Marlboro mate sometimes. Okay. Yes.
It looks better on the screen, right?
The
in real life.
Thing was the guy that played the Marlboro man who was always on the pier by himself was actually a very secure man, married for 40 years, and they had 3 children.
Really?
But he was good looking and he looked good in a hat. Just notice that for most part, the male sexual has a large amount of avoidant characteristics to it.
Really? Can you elaborate a little bit?
The male sexual has a lot of avoidant characteristics to it. Mm-hmm. So I think that helps to promote some forms of avoidancy. But for the most part, what I argue in my book is it goes back to childhood or at least a previous generation. You can get as an adult, but most of this stuff is set up by 1 to 1.5 years old. We know from attachment theory that if you separate a child from their mother, based on how they react at the reunion, you can tell whether that child is anxious, secure, or avoidant.
Right. I read that.
And it will track the rest of their life. And when I remember the first time I read that research, it was almost staggering to think that things had been wired to that extent. Now, if you're out there, some people think, oh my God, I'm screwed. The brain has neuroplasticity. People can change it. All of that was your brain keeping you on the planet. So we like it. It's working real good. We just want to give it a game plan.
So how do you guide singles and couples to create that secure relationship with themselves so they can be in a secure relationship?
Well, this research is called attachment theory. It came up with these labels. And when I look at labels, it's like a label on $5 might get you something at Starbucks.
Right.
So I asked the question, everybody wants to be secure. Now, how did that enter my mind? I go, how? You might think of it like this: is I have 2 friends that have been married 40 years. Well, why do they get to be? What's different about their brains? right? That was my question. How and what's different about that secure brain? And how do we get back? Because sometimes when people hear these categories, I was at a party once and a guy read the book Attached, which does a very good job of describing things. Not so much a way back home, but it tells you where you're lost in the fog with love, so to speak. And he said, I got halfway through the book and I got so hopeless because I realized I was avoidant. And now I had a big old invisible sign above my head that said screwed.
So
now, that's not, I wrote that what gets you back to secure are these, that those babies I talked about between 1 and a half, all the secure babies got 4 feelings.
Okay. Could you elaborate on those 4 feelings? This is a good time to do this. Yeah.
Yes.
The 4 key feelings. Yes. And just, I wanted to say one thing for singles too. You had shared this with me before in conversations, that these feelings are really important to what they should be looking for in dating, rather than those lists of characteristics which go on, which you talked about at the beginning that are unrealistic. But we really should be focused on those 4 feelings.
Exactly. Yeah, your brain is looking for 4 feelings. These feelings say I'm loved. And attachment, if you go out to a website, it says he needs to be 6'2", he needs to be an attorney, a doctor, does Pilates, read the love languages, and loves hiking. And those are all nice. That's compatibility. But these feelings are what tell you it's your natural brain's natural GPS for love. And every child, 1 and 1.5, uses these feelings, and our brains continue to use them as a way to navigate relationships.
I love this. These 4 feelings are your natural GPS for love.
Exactly.
That's a great line. So you want to go through each one?
Sure.
Okay.
Welcomed with joy. When a child is first born, like, oh, there's little Susie, all that stuff. Okay, there's a little Gail. Oh, so glad you're here. That's welcome with joy. And later on as an adult, it's when you wake up in the morning and you hear your guys say, good morning, gorgeous. That's welcome with joy. Or you come home at night and you see they're having a hard day and you say, come here, baby. It looks like you need a hug. That's welcome with joy, right? Now, the other one that all babies get in this period of time that becomes like a part of our compass is worthy and nourished. Something that's very near and dear to your heart. But worthy is the second feeling that comes in. This is when the babies, you get attuned and timely responsive to your needs, right? There's at first, you don't want the blankie, you want the bottle. You don't want the bottle, you know what changed, whatever. And the baby learns if they reach out for their needs, it's okay. It's okay to reach out for their needs.
So when they feel
worthy.
So when they feel worthy and nourished, their needs are being met.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. They make bids for attention, those tiny screams, and in the middle of the night, come get me, whatever that is. And later on, that feeling of I deserve to be nourished and feeling worthy, I can reach out for my needs, comes in as you're able to ask for your needs without giving and giving. Okay.
I love that. Can ask for needs without giving and giving.
Yeah. Yes. And I'm enough as I am to ask for my needs. I don't have to do any more. That's what that secure baby's feeling. I ask because I have a need.
So you don't have to give to get.
Exactly.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
You're worth it as
it's not a transactional thing. Really secure spouses just give naturally to each other. It's a giving spree. Okay. And the third is cherished and protected. That comes on early when the baby first gets mobility and they find out they're me for the first time. They say, wait a minute, I thought I was one with mom, but mom's over there and I'm over here. What's up with that? And they know they're a little vulnerable, so they want mom around, dad around. And so they want to explore their world as a me, but they want to know someone, they're part of a we, as I put it. Someone's looking over them, protecting them, cherishing them. And so you get the right to separate and belong. You're cherished. Someone's looking over you. That means someone's looking at and realizes, hey, she's working in her art studio today and it's a hot day and she's got the fan on. Maybe I should go get her some really cold lemonade because she loves lemonade. So that's cherished, protected. Someone's looking over your dreams.
Yep.
Yep.
How is that different than nourished?
Nourished, I put in a little worthy and nourished there.
Yep.
But cherished and protected is where you get to pursue your own, you get to be a me, But it's not all Marlboro, mate. You get to come home to the home port of somebody's heart. You get to be a we too. And if you don't feel cherished and protected, some part either says, I want to do it all by myself because I can't depend on that we. There's another version where some people only get a right to be enmeshed in a we, and they have no right to be a me. So they tend to lose themselves in relationships.
So there's a fine balance.
I can only be in a relationship if I make you the standard of my experience.
Right. Is that the same as someone having your back?
Yes.
The feeling that
partnership, the we. This is the feeling that needs to be at the center of every great couple. Show me a couple without a we, and I'll show you a war. And what most couples are failing at is there's no we. There is a we, that connection. I know that my real client when I'm working with couples is yes, both of them, but my real client is between their heads, the we, so to speak.
Okay. And that can be taught.
Yes. Yeah. But it's the feeling. If they don't feel safe, if they don't feel cherished and protected in that relationship, some part won't want to be in it.
So even when you think in dating, I think when we look at the movies, when all people, the romance, there's this thrill, and actually feeling safe is more important than feeling excited in a way, right? You need to have the passion, you need to have the energetic chemistry and physical attraction. But
safe. The book is called Safe to Live In. I once had someone on stage say, "Who wants to be safe? We want to be excited. We want sexuality. Nobody wants to be safe." And so at that point, I just pointed out to the ladies, there were about 300 in this audience at the time. I said, ma'am, it is true. We all like excitement. We all like that. I said, but there's an interesting little thing that's that when we know that when we do functional MRIs on a woman's brain, that for her to have an orgasm, her amygdala has to be totally dark, has to be totally off. There can't be any fear. She has to feel totally safe to have an orgasm. How many of you like safe now? I got a standing ovation on that. Yeah, safety starts looking really good.
And we'll go to the fourth one in a second, but what can someone do to help the other person feel safe?
Yeah, I just want to say the fourth one is empowered with choice too.
Okay.
Empowered with choice is you get to have a voice. You get to be able to have shared experiences. So you get to create your own inner experience. You're good with all of it. And it's part of intimacy. I can be good and bad, strong and weak. Sometimes it's the ability to say, honey, most time I'm pretty good. And I realized I was a jerk back there.
So it's you're accepting each other's imperfections and realizing that it's not always roses. And
you can create your own experience and you can assert and you can have shared influence. That's the secure version of it, at least. Yes.
So just to go back for a second, so how can you help your partner feel safe?
Safe is a lot of things. Everybody has their own thing. But you want to give each other these four feelings.
Okay, so these are the feelings that would create the safety.
How safe do you feel in a relationship if when you walk in, they never lift up their eyes to see from the iPhone or doing social media to even acknowledge you're there? Mm-hmm. Some part just feels like, do I really belong here? It's also more right to separate too. If you can give these beautiful feelings to each other, when people feel welcomed, just think, walk into a party and everybody ignores you. How safe do you feel? Or you just don't get greeted. And somebody says, oh my God, there's Gail, come on in here. That's just human nature. So welcome with joy, worthy, cherished, and empowered. People feel safe. They feel loved. And if you're out there and you're thinking you're dating, or even if you're in a relationship, this is your GPS, 1 to 10. How welcome with joy do you feel? Anything under a 7 is a problem. 7 or less, I would say. Worthy and nourished, 1 to 10.
Right.
1 to 10, cherished and protected. 1 to 10, empowered with choice. If any area is less, 7 or less, that's an area to work on. If any two of those feelings are missing, you know that there's some serious problems. And if 3 or 4 of these feelings are missing, then that's what I call a toxic. relationship.
Okay.
It's easier to figure out a toxic relationship knowing your brain's GPS than going and reading a whole manual on, cluster B personality disorders and knowing all the characteristics of
right. What I love about your 4 feelings and in your book, which again is excellent, it's not all the analysis that we've grown up thinking you have to do. Like, it's much more proactive. Like,
Yes.
You don't have to rehash all those wounds. We have to bring them to light to heal. I understand that. But you have this GPS here. So by working on these 4 feelings, you're focusing on moving forward in the new versus rehashing the past.
Exactly. It's about finding what the missing feeling was early on in life that's creating the patterns now and making it safe for your brain to feel that feeling again. Now, it is both a flavor of safety, and you need to, so they feel in their bones. I am worthy. People don't give and give and give. They don't select takers. Or I feel it's okay to feel empowered. Okay.
Right.
And it has to feel safe. And if they feel it in their bones and in their body, they won't find someone who will dominate them. Now, safety is important. If you're like for me, empowered wasn't one of those feelings that felt safe, because if you spoke anything to my mom, you could literally be thrown against a wall. So if someone you have to find the exact flavor of safety,
right,
and the brain is looking for, and tie that to the feeling. And then the brain goes, oh, I can feel that suddenly it's okay to feel empowered in a relationship.
right.
But you could give that person's communication skills. But if they don't have that right to assert because they don't feel empowered, they don't feel safe being empowered, they're never going to do it.
Gary, how has the pandemic changed relationships for singles and couples?
Oh, my God. It has. For singles and couples, I just knew as soon as Gavin Newsom put down the lockdown, I didn't even know. My adult son calls me on a Saturday afternoon and says, you just been grounded, Dad. So, how does that feel? And I'm thinking, well, it's been a few years. I thought for 2 hours what this would do. And I realized, remember, earlier I talked about cherished and protected, that there's this, all relationships, good relationships, are about going out into the world, being a me, exploring. Just like the little baby explores the world,
right,
but wants to be able to come home to mommy or daddy's lap, to have
right,
that we, to have that
right.
looking. It's me and we. And it's like breathing. Expand, go out and explore, and then come back to yourself. And in a committed relationship, I would not just self, but come home to a committed relationship where someone's got your back. That's secure attachment. And
right.
in a good couple, that's what we're aiming for. Now, COVID takes that and splits it right down. Singles are now getting all me. And it feels scary to date. You might get something. Who knows? Nobody wants to die if you hold hands, all that whole thing. And so they're feeling unworthy and hopeless, very frustrated. But so they're not getting much of a right to connect. Now, on the other hand, couples are sheltering in place. If they've got kids and they're doing homeschooling, it's even worse. And now they have all we time, and nobody can handle that much we time. There's no chance to be a me. There's no chance to be free of someone else's bids for attention, because we can only have so much of that energy, and we can't
right.
be in a bid zone for it all the time. We need some downtime
right.
for ourselves. And so for them, especially if they're couples, if they haven't dealt with their issues, then their issues are staring them 24/7. And
there's no distractions anymore.
Just use distractions, like
right.
going out to the gym or going to work, to manage the places they rub against each other. But now the rub is all day long, and it's superheating those relationships. Too little connections, a bad thing. Too much connections, a bad thing.
So finding the balance. So do you see that there'd be more divorce as a result of this, or do you see that some relationships will deepen or will go 50-50? What's your take?
It was 1989. There was a study done. We know that when there's all this sort of catastrophe going on, that there's 3 things that kind of happen. Is one, childbirth, and about 9 months go up in hospitals.
Right.
That makes sense. Just go up and marriages will go up. Because for some people, they can see it clearly. They can't run from it. So there will be this week, and everybody's expecting divorce this next Monday to be the highest divorce rate in history. People trying to get out. Okay. But there's also the woman that said she got married and she's about 5 years married, and she had always been thinking, gosh, I wonder if I should have been married. He's a good guy. I'm wondering. But when this guy shows up in COVID and he becomes her rock, she's, oh my God, I made such a great choice.
Wow. It's wonderful.
Now, if they had been single, that would have been the day she said, let's lock this up and let's get married. He's a keeper. Yeah, that's the day. And I have heard those stories too, where somebody says, God, they showed up and I knew this is a keeper.
I was just going to ask you that. Do you know, when people talk about soulmates and things like that, do you feel like when people meet that they just know?
Sometimes, but not always. I've heard some various stories. You know, John Gray's got a really good one. But other times it's a discovery. And you may not be, and the idea that the door's open, you just know it. In my experience, it's discovery. It's getting to know each other. And you don't know for a while. There's that. There's a wide variety of ways that people find their soulmates. For some, it's, oh.
I heard you in another interview talk about the amount of time people should be together before they commit.
Yeah.
How long it takes that discovery process. What was that you said?
It's 2 years. And if you think about it, there's been attachment studies that say that it takes about 2 years for two people's attachment systems. They got to keep it objective. But you could say their hearts to really fully learn how to disclose and to trust each other, to fully attach.
Okay.
Yeah. 2 years. And I remember having an interview with Paul Craig Brunson, who wrote the preface for the book. And he began to realize that when he looked at successful couples, the 2 year rule was about normal. His mom had been married 2 years, and you look at a lot, 2 years. 2 years is a good time because you got that phase of initial attraction where oxytocin rushes and dopamine rushes say, oh my God, let's just go full bore. And the oxytocin says, trust this person, turns off all the things. And then 2 to 3 months into the relationship is when you start seeing the first problems. And there's a disappointment phase. If you look at some of the couples research, the couples phase where there's conflict and disappointment is natural. And it's the system testing for trust. It doesn't mean your first problems are bad. It could be. You could say, oh my God, they're a drug addict. Okay, that's okay, right. But you might say, oh my God, sometimes he can totally miss my bids for attention. And this point, now he could be thinking, and he could be listening to, or he could be a very selfish man that doesn't really get it, or he could be someone that's cluing in on something else. And you guys just need to talk about what it is, how you guys connect. And this is a trust building stage.
Right.
So you've got to get through that trust building stage. And
I'm sorry, Gary, when does the trust building stage start?
We're about 2-3 months into it.
Okay.
I mean, it's always there, but 2 or 3 months is when people inevitably start becoming who they are. And this will go for a good year and a half, this trust building stage. And if it's done well, you learn to trust, and you get to if there's enough really good disclosure, you get to realize what the essence of that person is. And you fall in love with the essence. That's the gateway to commitment. To understand this, they did a study with little kids, 3 and 4, who had attachment objects, like when they have bickies and blankets they want to fall asleep with. My son had one. He lost it once, and I was told, I don't care what you have to do, find it. And she goes, I cannot get into bed at night, and you will not want to see me in the morning. But they brought them into a room that had this big old box that could be a replicator. Of course, inside was a carefully disguised scientist or lab assistant. And they would ask these 3 and 4 year old children, can we replicate Mr. Binky or Mr. Bear? If the child was attached, but not that attached, they go, yeah, sign him up. I want 2 of those. Get it. Yeah, give me another one. But if the child was really attached, they would say, no, you can't replicate Mr. Bear. There's nobody else like Mr. Bear. And what they found out is when there's attachment, there's an essence that we had quote attached to, we fall in love with, that we can't find elsewhere.
Okay.
That's what leads to commitment. In the dating world, swipe left, swipe left, swipe left. What stops people from swiping left? You can always find someone who's 6 foot or somebody who's blonde or whatever. You can always find another one than that, But if there's an essence, there is nobody who plays with children the way he does or she does. There's the way they just are so grounded. There's some unique part of them that you fall in love with. That's when you know you're loved. That's what says, I don't care what else is out there. I'm committed to her. That's the gateway. And that takes time. That's that intimacy we've talked about.
Right.
So it's trust and it's that essence thing. And then people say, let's lock this down and get committed. When people have trust and they have the 4 feelings and some alignment on values, and there's that essence they love, commitment is not a problem. Nobody comes in and says, well, I don't know if I want marriage. They just naturally do it. Occasionally there may be some sort of thing, but for most people, the commitment falls from that.
It's a new world now, both in dating and the pandemic moving forward. Learn the new relationship skills to thrive in Gail's 6-session coaching package, Creating a New Mindset for Love. Release the past, clear lingering inner blocks, set new intentions. Learn the 4 key elements to a successful relationship and dip your toes into dating again with greater awareness. Gail Jones is a certified relationship and conscious dating coach who has a unique twist on healing that creates rapid breakthroughs. Email her at gailjones@claimyourworthiness.com to set up your complimentary 30-minute session and learn more. And check out her website, claimyourworthiness.com, especially her video on the homepage, to catch a glimpse of her expertise.
So I'm going to open a can of worms here.
Sure.
So in my coaching, many women are feeling very frustrated that they've done so much inner work and that men have yet to catch up. And I've had a lot of male clients that are doing the work, so I don't want to, but that's just been a pulse that's been happening. So there seems to be a yearning among many for more conscious relationships, real true partners where both people show up for each other. So can you define a conscious relationship?
Okay. And by the way, I agree that for the most part, us men, we men we have not done the same amount of work the last 40 years that women have on ourselves. And I think we're behind the scene. I don't know. I've done the work, but I've just noticed that for a lot of men, they come in with less preparation to understand their feelings and personal growth and things like that. So I get that. Okay. But I do believe we're just now realizing, hey, this whole thing is about us being liberated too. So a conscious relationship is where you have developed, in your relationship, you have developed that 1 degree of separation from your reactive states, from all of the little interesting things we're given culturally, so that you can ask the question, gosh, how are we creating this experience between each other? Okay. Instead of saying, oh my God, they always react that, or I always react that, you go, you can. A conscious relationship is where you're looking at the relationship and go, how are we creating this and how can we create more loving? And I think that allows for our higher selves to show up a lot more. So the worst thing that happens in couples and when they're in a relationship is they get so embedded in the downward pattern or the experience that they have no freedom, no behavioral flexibility, no perspective from which to say, gosh, isn't it interesting that we are always creating that experience? I wonder how we're doing it. Right. That's the more interesting question for me.
And so in a conscious relationship, it's a commitment to a growth path.
It is a commitment to a growth path for each other and for the we. Now, it's really important that I had one couple, it's mentioned in the book, where they had done every guru on the planet. Tony Robbins, private platinum program, for God's sake. Chopra, you name it, they did. Right. And the telling work was they came in the first session and she goes, I want a we. And he says, what do you mean we? Well, there's 2 me's here. But later on in the session, he says, we've invested in all this transformation and it's done us a lot of good. And we thought it would give us a better relationship. but it hasn't. Two me's without a we will not create a lasting relationship.
Right.
The work was to give them, both of them had more right to work on me than a we. Neither
Right.
of them felt cherished
Right.
and protected in different
Right.
ways. So
Right.
with not cherished, they don't create the we. They cherish and protect myself. That's not cherished and protected. We gave them that. Then now they've got a great relationship.
That's excellent. Excellent
Yeah.
example. It seems so you take all those characteristics that people were trained to develop when they're going on dating, just put the we on there, the top of the list. You want somebody that can function as a we and create a we.
Everybody knows Maslow's theory of self-actualization. If you think about it, we were all given attachment systems, right? That we are meant, born, wired, created for a relationship. I talk about rights. None of them were given so we could just do self. It's self in a we. None of us became a self by ourselves. The top should be some form, I don't have the word for it, not self-actualization, but we-actualization.
Right. That's excellent.
Think about what a we would do for most relationships.
Right.
Think about what a we would do for our planet. Think about what a we would do if we were a we with the planet Earth, what it would do for even things like saving our planet's ecology and stuff
Right.
like
Well,
that.
that is somewhat of the plus of the pandemic. I think we're all learning that we need each other.
Yes.
I think we had a very me generation before this, and that's being broken open.
It exposed the fact that this myth of radical self-individualization, self-actualization was a myth. We know we need each other.
Excellent.
We're not reptiles.
Right. So, Gary, before we conclude, I just want to have you just highlight really quickly, without getting really technical, your skill sets, the NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. But you said something to me in one of our conversations about, and I thought this was fascinating, if we can not get too technical with it, but that so much work has been focused on the prefrontal cortex, and that where the change really happens is in the limbic system. So with the feelings, can you just explain that in layman's terms? Because that's really where you go, right, with the limbic system, and that's what's really overlooked in most relationship coaching, most therapy. So can you explain that a little bit?
Sure. So a lot of coaching, even therapy, with the standard being cognitive behavior therapy, right? I mean, think about this. I'll explain it in two different ways. These four feelings are all given to a child: welcome, worthy, cherished, and empowered, between 0 and 3. Now, you also get, let's just put it into the hopper. Some children get unwelcomed, unworthy, uncherished, and disempowered. Those also go into the hopper. Either will become your reference. If you were given unworthy, that will become your GPS for love. And this is why you choose someone that's a taker. If you got disempowered, you'll choose someone. So either set of feelings. And then at 3, the prefrontal cortex comes online, the stuff that does this cognitive behavior therapy. And it says, oh my God, I feel this. Because the brain at 1 to 1.5 doesn't have any of the machinery up and running yet. So it's just feelings that are running it. Later on, you'll get this thing called limiting beliefs. It comes up with a limiting belief: well, I must not be enough, or I was born a girl and that's why I'm not enough, or I was born a boy and I'm not enough. In my instance, I had the reverse psychology. If I'd been born a girl, I would have been all good enough. Now, and then you come up with really interesting stories, and this is the part that learns skills, it tries to compensate. Now, later on, some coach comes in and says, somebody said they just felt disempowered. It wasn't good to speak up. They go, your problem in your relationship is you don't speak up. Here's some skill sets. But some part goes, oh man, I'm disempowered. It ain't safe being empowered. Good luck. And then the coach says, why aren't you doing this? Because some part says, that's not safe. I don't have that right. Or you coach them on reaching, just tell your husband what you really need. But every time they reach out, that old feeling of unworthy crops up, and it's just about the time they're going to ask. It feels like the dog collar that tells you the dog you can't go beyond a certain place in the yard, and then they pull back, it goes off, and they get this bad feeling, oh, I better not do it today. When I work with couples, I don't give the skill sets at first, because I know the skill sets are there to give certain feelings, and if they don't have the feeling, they will either already welcomed and worthy and cherished and empowered. they will, one, not be able to do the skill set or sustain it. Or if they do it, they will give it in the key of whatever they have. You can
So
tell
you start
somebody,
the work with the limbic system by doing the feelings, and then going to the prefrontal cortex to help them learn the skills.
Think of it like this. Emotions are motivational states in all mammal brains. That's what they're there for. They're there to motivate you. So if all feelings had words, and they don't, but if they had words, they'd only have two things. They'd say yes or no. They say yes to an experience or no to an experience. Worthy says I can reach out. Unworthy says I can't.
Okay.
Empowered says I can have a voice. Disempowered says I can't. If you don't change the permission slips, and the permission slips are these feelings, they are simply yes or no. If you don't give the whole set of permission slips, then they can't do what the cognitive behavior therapist or the coach wants them to do. You've got to, once you get these 4 feelings online, the brain has the full set of permission slips for love. And if you don't give them the permission slips, it's like saying, I'm going to go to Europe without a passport.
So if they want to learn more about those permission slips, they should definitely get your book. You outline them very well. Safe to Love Again, How to Release the Pain of Past Relationships and Create the Love You Deserve. So in wrapping up, is there any other thoughts you have on inspiring us to trust in loving again or deepening the relationships we have?
Okay. First off, if you're out there listening, you were born worthy. You were born worthy. There's nothing, no baby asked, can I breathe when it comes out of the womb. It knows it's worthy of that breath. Right. And no baby says, I wonder if it's okay to breastfeed. They may get the message later, but when they first come out, you were born enough. And love is your birthright. And I know there's a lot of people that are afraid that love doesn't exist or can't exist for me, but this is doable change. Real hope is possible. And there's a lot of people looking for love right now. And yes, there's some people online that give online dating a bad name, but there's so many good people. And the fact of the matter is, you're doing the world a service by recovering your own world, your own love style, because someone out there is someone who's looking for love just as sincerely as you. Mm-hmm. And if you show up for love, they're showing up for love, you'll find each other.
Thank you for ending on that hopeful message.
Yes.
So Gary is offering listeners a free gift today. It's called Love Notes with Dr. Gary Salyer. It's a collection of short, heartfelt, and practical 3 to 4 minute videos, including other relationship experts like Dr. John Gray, Ariel Ford, and some others. It's designed to help both singles and couples through each video teaching some new stories. And to get that, go to Gary Salyer, SALYER.com, and then scroll down and you'll fill out a form called Love Inspirations. Again, he's offering that free today at Gary, SALYER.com. So Gary, thank you so very much for being with us today. I loved your whole unique approach. I loved how you really explained secure relationships, I think, and inspired us that they're really possible.
It's really possible. It is. And thank you, Gail. It's, you're a beautiful soul. We've had some private conversations, and it's an honor to be here. I just love the fact that you're out there helping the world become more conscious. We need more people like you. Kudos, bravo for the soul that's showing up in this life.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you for joining me on our journey today. I am so grateful you are part of my podcast community, where it is my dream that by claiming our worthiness together, we can more impactfully shed our light and love on this world. In future podcasts, I'll be sharing more stories of hope and unlimited possibilities for creating anew. You can also follow me on Instagram or on my Facebook page. I also hope you'll be inspired to share my podcast with your friends. Together, we are stronger. Blessings, Gail.
Instagram and Facebook at Coach Gail Jones.